Maria, thank you. This past Sunday's scheduled march to celebrate gay pride in West Hollywood was initially canceled because of concerns about COVID-19 and then came back as part of the Black Lives protest movement. It was huge. In many ways, it was a celebration of two minority communities, Black and LGBTQ+, both with a history of suffering at the hands of the police. But within the LGBTQ+ community, there's also a long-standing racial divide that obviously needs to be addressed. And Jasmyne Cannick is here. She's an author, commentator, and co-founder of the National Black Justice Coalition. And we want to talk about that divide, Jasmyne. Good morning to you. It's been too long since I've seen you. Welcome to Good Day LA. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Tony. So great to see you.
So how big a divide are we talking about, and what can we do about it?
Well, it's a huge divide. I have been saying since this movement, this moment has been upon us, that it is not going to pass over the LGBTQ community in any way. The same divides that exist in Black and white America also exist within the LGBTQ community, not just with Black folks and white gays, but also with Latinx folks and other people of color as well. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in the LGBTQ community, and I'm here for it. I'm definitely all here for it, and I'm not willing to give them a pass on this. You mentioned in the intro that, you know, it was like two marginalized communities, Black and LGBTQ, but what happens to people like me who are at the intersection of that, right? Who happen to be Black and same gender loving, right? So we have to deal with it in both communities. In the Black community, sometimes we have to deal with homophobia and a misunderstanding of who our community is. And in the LGBTQ community, we have to deal with racism. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I want to see more conversations had. I'm not willing to give the white LGBTQ community a pass on this.
And so where do those conversations begin? How do we get them started? And how do you make real progress? Because talk is one thing, action is quite another.
Exactly. So, for example, the city of West Hollywood on Friday will host its first ever, I think, Juneteenth event, although it's virtual. I think this is the first time the city of West Hollywood has ever done anything around Juneteenth, which traditionally and historically for Black people is an important day, right? Because that's when the last of us finally found out we were free. But for a city like West Hollywood to want to bring together Black LGBTQ leaders to talk about what freedom looks like today in our community is a good start. I think there are lots of conversations that need to be had from LA to New York and various communities, various LGBT communities along the way. But talking is the first part about it, the first part of it. And it's also an acknowledgement of, hey, we know that we haven't been right. We know that we've been wrong the past 50 years, the past 100 years. We want to make a difference. We want to change our relationship. And I think that's what the Black same gender loving community is waiting for the LGBTQ community to say to them. All
right. Jasmyne, let's shift gears here for a moment and talk about the historic Supreme Court decision regarding discrimination in employment against people because of their sexual orientation or gender identification. The Supreme Court in the 6-3 vote has now outlawed that, and some people are saying in some ways that's actually even more monumental than marriage equality being approved. What do you think?
Well, I think, one, being born and raised in California, sometimes we take a lot of things for granted here, right? We don't realize how hard it is for other people in other parts of the country. I think we were all blown away and shocked by the decision from the court yesterday. But I also think that the court's decision was right in step with the majority of how Americans feel when it comes to employment discrimination. Think this is not 1990, this is not 1980, this is 2020. And Americans have evolved and come around on a lot of issues, including how we want to treat our LGBTQ residents, folks in the country.
You know, and some say the implications of this actually are much more far-reaching than just employment. I mean, if it is illegal to discriminate against someone on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identification when it comes to employment, that would, by extension, you would think, include fair housing, education, equal pay, equal protection under the law, which is huge.
Yeah, I think this decision is going to open the door for a lot of conversation and a lot of new actions. In particular, I think there are going to be a lot of lawsuits that are now going to be filed, right, by people who were discriminated against, LGBTQ people who were discriminated against and were terminated from their jobs. I think this decision has opened up a Pandora's box, but it's also going to allow us to make some more moves forward.
Jasmyne Cannick, thanks so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Good to see you. Stay safe.
Thank you, Tony.